Hey guys, welcome back to my show. Today is a really special episode as we have debut author Payal Doshi on the show. So before we begin, I would like to give a big shout out to everyone else who has been watching the show since a long time. And I would love you to watch this show also. Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin. Hi Payal, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, Anika. I'm so excited to be here. It is a real privilege to be interviewed by you, a 13-year-old who has read my book, a book that was written for kids like you. And so I'm very excited to be here and chat with you. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So let's dive into the questions.
Yes.
So what was the first book that made you cry?
The first book that made me cry was Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. It's such a beautiful, so it's also one of my favorite books and probably the book that got me to love reading and made me fall in love with middle grade books. Anne, have you read the book? Anne Shirley is such an amazing character. She's such a, tomboy. She speaks her mind, but she's also so sensitive and she sees the world with such wonderful eyes, and her plight was sad. It made me feel bad. My heart used to break for her, but at the same time she showed such strength in her circumstances. And so I think that was probably the first book that made me cry.
That's amazing, because even I have read that book and it's like a really nice, sweet, heartfelt book.
Yes.
So what character did you like from that book?
From Anne of Green Gables?
Yeah.
I really loved Anne because I think I read Anne when I was around your age, or maybe even younger. I think maybe I was 11 when I read Anne of Green Gables. And it was the first book that I read that showed a female character who was, not necessarily prim and proper and, goody two shoes and following all the rules and listening to, everybody. She was her own kid with her own mind. She had this amazing imagination. She was not afraid to speak whatever was on her mind. Sometimes that got her into trouble, but she didn't stop anyway. She was just such a big-hearted, generous girl who had different flaws than the girls that I had read about previously. And I loved that she had such a wonderful friendship with Diane, her best friend. And I loved her relationship with Gilbert as well. And I connected with her so much as a kid who was, also around the same age at the time and going through similar things in school with her. And I feel like she gave me the permission to be who I wanted to be without having to be what everybody else in the society expected you to be as a girl. I feel like she just allowed me to be myself. And so she is my favorite character from that.
That's amazing. Yeah. So have you ever gotten writer's block?
Oh, yes. Oh my God. Yes. And I can talk about it very recently because I am currently drafting the sequel to Ria and the Blood of the Nectar. It's my first draft. I am terrible at first drafts. I am really a writer who loves to revise, but first drafts are very tedious for me. And I often find myself having a lot of writer's block, even though I plot my novel, I outline my novel. But what I end up doing is my process is such that before I start writing any book, I will obviously have the plot idea, and then I will write it down on a piece of paper, and I will try and expand the plot and, just jot down those ideas. Then I will enter into a research phase where I will go online, read certain books based on the plot idea that I have, and then I will add more to the plot of the novel. And then I create like this bulleted outline of how I feel the novel will go. And then what happens is, and then I will begin to write. So even though it sounds like I've done so much research prior to writing the book and I've plotted the book pretty extensively, I know the main checkpoints of the book. But I don't, so I know that, my character A has to go from point 1 to point 2. But how my character is going to actually make it from point 1 to point 2, I don't know until I sit to write. So oftentimes I get writer's block because I know my character has to move and get to this place, but I'm either not loving the ideas in my head where I'm like, yeah, this is very ordinary the way they're going there. I feel that I need to add more tension, or I just feel like this is getting very repetitive or boring. And so then I end up being in a writer's block where I'm just like, I don't know how to move this character from this point to that point. But eventually it comes to me. Sometimes I just take a break, I will stop writing for that day, or for a few hours, I will just let it, ruminate in my mind. Sometimes the answer comes to me while I'm sleeping or I'm taking a shower and I'm like, oh yes, this is what the character should do. And yeah, so I would say that for me, it's like I'll take a little break, either go for a walk, either just step away from the book, or just have it at the back of my mind while doing other things. And even sometimes reading other books kind of helps to get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, that's like a major problem. Like, first drafts are always the hardest, because especially if you're a plotter. Sometimes plotters, like there's plotters, pantsers, and there's one more, I forgot which one it was. But like pantsers have more difficulties because like they just go by the flow. They don't plot at all. For example, me.
What are you?
Pantser.
You're a pantser. Oh my! I find pantsers to be pure geniuses, because I would just be staring at my computer screen, not knowing what I'm supposed to do or what I'm supposed to write if I was a pantser. Which is why I need to plot. Huh?
Yeah, if you're a pantser, then you will be like just writing down whatever comes to your mind, even stuff which are not even related to your book.
And then I wouldn't know what to do with them. I'd be like, these jigsaw pieces don't fit, and I would never be able to have a complete picture or a complete novel. So I am so not the poster child for a pantser. I am definitely a plotter.
Being a pantser would mean getting many books shelved. Like people who are pantsers, most of the time they can't work on one project. Like me, first book was really short. It was like a children's book. It was only 9 pages long. So I made a collection of all these stories I've written so far. Now the second book is going to be long. It's a mystery novel.
Love it.
So being a pantser is kind of hard in that way because you don't really know who's going to be the culprit. You don't know what is character A, character B, character C, because they're all suspects.
But that's so exciting. I mean, hearing about it just makes me get so excited, because I'm like, that's so cool, because it's like you're writing a story, especially if you're writing a mystery, then you are solving the mystery as you write it, which is really cool. And I will tell you that when I am going from that point, A to point B, I'm kind of pantsing my way through point A, even though I know I have to take my characters from this point to that point. I'm pantsing my way through between those 2 points. And in that, I have so much fun, especially when I'm in the flow, because then, it literally is like the characters just lead me down a path. And it's like, even though I planned for, a certain direction, I'm like, no, they want to go this way. And that almost feels like magic to me, because I had not planned it, I had not thought of it, and it came so organically. Whether it makes it in the book eventually or not is irrelevant. But I always pants my way through those checkpoints, and that's when I have the most fun writing. So I can see the allure of being a pantser. I would just get so much anxiety. I don't think I would be able to pants through an entire book without a plot.
Yeah, because as I said earlier, without a plot, your book would be like going in one direction, and then all of a sudden makes a wrong turn and then reaches somewhere else. It gets really confusing as a reader to like understand.
Yes, and I feel that one drawback might also be that you might write yourself into these dead ends. So then you might have to rewrite quite a bit to get out of, a plot point or plot hole that you have written yourself into, and like be like, okay, clearly I cannot move forward with this plot trajectory. So then you have to write backwards. So maybe if you plot, you might have slightly lesser revising and rewriting to do. Maybe.
Yeah. Because like going into a plot hole is kind of like getting stuck into like when you walk, you fall into a hole.
Yes.
And you are trying to get out by using vines around you. It's kind of like that.
It kind of is.
Because like when you get stuck in a plot hole, to get out, you try to make use of the words you have around you. If, for example, if there's a girl falling into a hole, let's say that's only the thing which is happening. But then instead of making her fall into a hole, you make her trip and fall. But then the way she trips is kind of absurd. And you want to change that. You use the things around you to make it feel more natural.
Absolutely right. That is so well put. And when you fall into that said hole, and if you can't find use for the words and the tools around you, then you have a problem. But at the same time, if you can, then you have organically created such incredible tension in your book that you had not thought of before. And that would be amazing too. So, you know, every writer has to respect their own process. And I think there are pros and cons to each process, being a plotter, a pencil, or even in between. So I would say just follow your intuition and your process as a writer, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get your story out.
Yeah.
And no process is easy. Both are equally tedious. So
because no two writers have the same writing process.
No.
And if they do, then that's a problem.
Yes, and that would mean that, you know, writing can fall under some sort of formula. Like you can write a book using some sort of formula, which you can't really. You know, writing is an art. It's not a science. And although there are a few elements, you can definitely use the tools from, you know, books on structure and storytelling, and there are tools you can use. But the real act of writing and incorporating those tools and adding your own touch and flavor to it is an art, and it can never be replicated by somebody else, because you're just two very different people.
Yeah. So now let's move on. So the book Ria and the Blood of Nectar, could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So Ria and the Blood of the Nectar is a story about 12-year-old Ria Chetri, who is from Darjeeling, India. She lives in the tea plantations of Darjeeling, and one day on her 12th birthday, her twin brother Rohan goes missing. Her amma gets really mad and blames her for his disappearance, and so that sets Ria off on an adventure to find him. She visits the town's fortune teller, she has clues to unravel, and ultimately she embarks on this magical and thrilling quest that takes her into an otherworldly realm called Astranthia, where she has to find out what has happened to Rohan. She discovers dark truths about her past. She discovers she has magic. She has to fight evil creatures. And ultimately, she has to save Rohan and the realm of Astranthia. But will she be able to do it in time? You will have to read the book to find out.
Okay. Since that book sounds very amazing, I urge you guys to check it out as soon as it hits the stores. If you want it earlier, you may request a copy from Payal, and let's see what she can do for you.
Yes, you can go to my website, which is payaldoshiauthor.com. You can order it on Amazon or any of your local bookstores. It's all on their online portals, so you can order the book. The book releases officially June 15th, and that's when you'll be able to find it in the stores, but it's available online if you'd like to pre-order.
Okay, that's amazing. So how did publishing your first book change your process of writing?
So initially, when I first started writing this book, it took me 10 years to finish it. That's a very long period of time. A lot of life got into the way. I came to study in the US. I got married. I had a kid. Lots of things happened, and it was a start, stop process. Once I got my book published, and I have now been signed for a trilogy. So Ria and the Blood of the Nectar is the first book in a series of 3 books. I have to now write the sequel and submitted it in a few months. And so I have to write an entire book in a few months, which was very different from my last experience where I didn't have a deadline. And there were some moments of procrastination, some moments where I really didn't have time because I was juggling a job. And so the biggest difference is I'm still figuring out how to write an entire book in a short period of time. Time is not a huge luxury for me because I have a 3-year-old daughter. So what I've come to realize is that I don't do very well with like big word count goals in a day. My hope and wish is to write every day, even if it's 50 words, 500 words, 1,000 words. That still doesn't happen every day because, again, different things happen, but I try to do that every day. I think about writing every single day, but the act of writing may not happen every day. But when I do sit to write, and I tend to get in at least 3 or 4 days of writing in a week, I don't focus on the quantity of words or the quality. It's just that I should write at that moment, on that day. Because as many words that I get down is more than what I had the day before. And so that's my strategy right now, to keep writing. I've written about 60% of the sequel, so I still have 40% to go, which is quite a bit. But I take it one day at a time.
That's amazing. So now that you are writing 3 books all at once, like you said, like these few months you're doing 2nd book, and then next few months you're doing 3rd book. Once you're done your 3rd book, what are you planning to do next?
Well, I'm only writing my sequel right now because the way it works in publishing is that once I finish writing my sequel, I wish I could write that quickly. There's not that you can't do that. It's just that I cannot do that. So I'm going to finish writing my book and then I will submit it to my editor, who will then read it, and then we will go through a series of edits. So I foresee the next year being spent, as in by the end of this year and maybe early next year, spent in revisions and edits of this book. And then possibly in 2022, I will start writing the last book. But that being said, to answer your question, I have plot ideas for 3 additional books like brewing in my mind. So I suspect that once I finish writing the sequel and I send it off to my editor, I will get a few months, break from the Ria series, where I might start plotting one of the books that, one of the ideas that I have in my head, just as a break to mix things up and not always continuously be in the world of Ria.
Yeah. So what part of your books, what inspired you to create such a nice, vivid, imaginative place?
So I love reading books in which the character the setting feels like a character in itself. I love lush prose, descriptions of nature. I just find that ends up transporting the reader to that place. And I really wanted my book to be a very immersive book. I wanted you to forget where you were and imagine that you were either in Darjeeling in the tea plantations or you were in Astranthia. So you will find that both settings are very lush and filled with floral descriptions and imagery. When I first started to write this book, and I knew obviously that it was going to be set in India, I was thinking about where I wanted to set it in. And I knew right away that I wanted it to be in Darjeeling because I wanted to write about a place in India that not too many people know about. And people may have heard of Darjeeling tea, but they have no idea about what the place looks like or where it is in India. After Slumdog Millionaire, the movie, there are images of India with Bombay, Mumbai being, slum-ridden and it's dirty and it's, or there are like really small villages everywhere. Like the stereotypical image of India is very different from the India that I'm writing. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to write about Darjeeling. because I wanted to showcase a beautiful part of the country, because we have so many beautiful places in the country. They just don't get spoken about and talked about and pictured about, so nobody really knows about them. So that is why I chose Darjeeling, because I wanted it to be set in this beautiful hill station with rolling tea plantations, the Himalayas at the back, and it's just a really gorgeous place. And then with Astranthia, again, like I said, I wanted it to be very lush and immersive. And, you know, you have read the book, so you know that flowers and one particular flower in particular is, you know, responsible for the magic of Astranthia. So nature is very connected to the story. It's an integral part of the magic system in Astranthia. I personally love nature. And when I think of a magical place, I just think of something incredibly stunning landscape wise, and so that's why I set both these places as very lush, verdant places.
That's amazing. So, are you planning to write any book with the setting which has no plants at all?
Well, yeah, actually. So one of the ideas in my head, I mean, it's a very, very nascent idea. It's just a kernel of an idea. It's like I want to set a book, you know, with kids who have magic in Mumbai. Have you ever been to Mumbai?
I shifted from Mumbai recently.
Yeah, so same here. So I wanted to, you know, set it in, you know, a building in Mumbai. And as you know, we have trees, but it's not particularly very green or lush. But that is one of the next books that I am very excited to write about. So it's about these kids who have magic, and that not too many people know about it, who are living this double life in Mumbai, just like in an apartment complex in Mumbai, in a colony in Mumbai somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing idea. Can't wait to read.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
I would tell myself that, especially when you're writing your first draft, keep writing till you reach the end. I did not do that with my first book, and it is one of the main reasons why it took me so long to write, because I would write a few chapters and then I would go back, reread them and edit them. And every time I started to write the next chapter, I would go back and just read what I had written to, you know, get into the mind space of what I wanted to write ahead. But then I would be like, oh, this sentence isn't nice. And, you know, maybe I should write something else here. So I ended up just rewriting and revising what I'd already written. And I just did not make good progress forward. So that left me with me writing a book for years and still not having a finished manuscript, however terrible it might have been. And so the advice I would give my younger self and any aspiring writer out there is that, especially when you're writing your first draft, just write until you hit the end. And remember that first drafts are terrible, and nobody writes a perfect first draft. And at the end of it, when you do have that first draft, you have a whole story that you can then mold and revise and shape to what you want it to be. But when you don't have a whole story, you can never get to that process of refining the whole story. You'll just end up having one part of it that is very polished, while the rest of it either doesn't exist or it's just a pile of words. So that would be my advice. Keep writing until you hit that finish line, because there are many, many people who want to write books and who start writing books, but there are a very few percentage of people that actually finish writing a book. And that even means just your first draft, which can be as terrible as it may be. But to get to that point, there's a very small percentage that makes it there. So I would say keep writing until you reach the end.
Yeah, when you write, most of the time, including me, when you go back and try to read to figure out what to write next, you end up getting stuck into editing, even though you're actually supposed to edit right after you're done writing your whole book. Because like you feel that if you don't read what's behind, you won't know what to add.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have to edit a large chunk in the end. But you don't think that if you do it now, then you'll end up editing. And doing editing means spending hours and hours doing it, and then you forget, and then the writing time which you devoted for your writing would be finished, and then you would be like next day again editing, because then you'll again be reading what you have.
Exactly. And the fact is that once you finish writing the whole book, even if you've edited, the first few chapters, the first section of your book so several times, you will still have to edit it once you have the whole book. So you're just unnecessarily wasting time editing and editing and editing when you would anyways have to do that later. And so many things change as you keep writing, and as you keep writing forward in your story and in your novel. So absolutely, it is a waste of time to spend that much time in editing before you've finished your novel.
Yeah. So what did you do with your first book? Like how much, like now that your book is going to be releasing in June and you're giving out pre-orders, what do you plan to do? Like how are you planning to promote your book and make it to the best-selling list?
Well, I don't know if I have anything to do with getting the book on a bestsellers list. Those lists are very difficult to get to. And that's not my goal really, to be on a bestsellers list. I mean, if it happens, of course, I'm going to be delighted, but that's not my end goal. What I'm doing in terms of promotions is, wonderful interviews like this, where I get to talk about my book. I have a wonderful pre-order campaign. So if you pre-order my book from my publisher's website, which is mangoandmarigoldpress.com, then you will get a free sticker, a free button, a free bookmark, a signed book plate, as well as one free chapter from the book that will be sent to your inbox that you can read. And for my launch, I'm planning a few events with some bookstores and with some authors, where we'll get to talk about my book, and hopefully people will get excited to buy it and read it.
Yeah, free things make many people be like, okay, let's see what this is. Because like since it's free, you'll be like, maybe this is good, maybe we could try doing it.
Yes, and there's some fun free swag, right? So there's like a sticker which you can,
it's kind of like how on shows when they like have the Ellen show, they like give you like this giveaways, like a free bookmark signed by Oprah Winfrey or someone like that.
Yep, right. Except mine aren't as cool as those giveaways that Oprah and Ellen give, but I feel like to a book lover, it might be fun.
Yeah.
We all love bookmarks because we always lose them anyway.
Yeah, because it's better than dog-tailing your pages, because that spoils the pages anyways.
Right? I couldn't agree more.
Because dog-tailing them, especially if you are reading a library book and you do not have a bookmark, that's way worse.
That is way worse, because yes, absolutely. If you still do that to your own books, it's fine.
Yeah, recently I got a book and it is fully creased from the ends. It was so hard to read.
Yes, absolutely.
The edge is all folded and torn.
Oh no. Well, I hope that at least that book has been read that many times then, if nothing.
Yeah, it has many stamps on it.
Oh, nice.
Speaking of libraries, are you planning on bringing your first book into libraries?
Yes, I am. I very much am. I do plan on reaching out to my local libraries in different parts of the country. I hope to do some events with them, once the book releases. Maybe if they have book clubs in their libraries, I would love for my book to be read by the kids and discussed, and I would love to do an event with them where I can talk about the book and talk about my process. It is incredibly important for me to have my book in libraries. My publisher is also, they have a wonderful initiative called 1001 Diverse Books. And what they do is we will be donating 1001 copies of my book and stocking them up in schools and libraries in places where they don't have the resources to buy the book. So at least that way kids from marginalized backgrounds and from underserved communities will get access to the books.
That'll be really nice. So, what authors have like motivated you to like keep on writing despite all your struggles, like for example writer's block, not getting enough ideas? So which authors or which people inspired or motivated you to continue writing?
I don't have one particular author that did that for me. I'm part of a group of writers and authors who are debuting in this year 2021, and I'm a part of a few writers who write middle grade books. And I just find that, you know, watching them write their books and watching them talk about their books and write newer books kind of helps me stay motivated as well. It's nice to feel like you are part of that community. It's nice to see others doing well, and then, you know, want to do well yourself and support them, and, you know, vice versa. I think that fuels me because I, you know, like you have published a book, you know what that feels like. It is such a good feeling just to even hold that book in your hands, that whatever you wrote and imagined in your mind is now printed in flesh in this, you know, gorgeous bound book. I think just the idea of having that as a dream for every new book that I write is motivation enough. And the writers that are my peers and my colleagues, and the writers who, you know, even on Twitter, there's a big writing community. It's just nice to see them work so hard on their craft. That makes me motivated to stick to doing what I'm doing, even though it gets hard sometimes, and, you know, you get the writer's block and you may feel like you don't have enough creativity in you some days. I feel like that really fuels me and motivates me to keep going.
That's amazing. So the network of authors who are debuting their books in 2021, is their website the 21 Doors?
Yes, it is.
It actually sounds, yeah, I did my research. They're actually how I found you and your book.
Is that so? Oh, that's wonderful. Yes,
Because
you are absolutely right.
Because I keep on finding new books to read, because there's hardly any books left for me to read. I've read almost every book there is available.
That's amazing, Anika. You are incredible. You are an inspiration to me. Forget just kids your own age. You're an inspiration to me as a book lover and as a writer. I mean, hats off to you that you have published your book already and you're writing another one. I didn't even know what I wanted to do at 13. I did love reading books, and that was it. That was the extent of it.
So like what I do is, like, since I've read almost every book, I go on to like Goodreads and search for debut books which are coming and try to contact the authors, maybe try to get them on my show to speak about the book, and then maybe try and getting a pre-order book or an ebook from them. That way I can actually read it, and it's really fun. Currently, this is an old book, but then this is the last book which is there from previous years.
Wow.
It's called The Inventors at Number 8. And then there's this book called The Griffnite Chronicles. I was currently reading that. That's also kind of like Ria and the Blood of Nectar.
Yeah.
It's that is not in the Indian style.
No.
Oh, and also I know a very great author who also writes mythologies. Like, she writes Hindu characters. So like there's called a book by Roshni Chokshi.
Yes.
Her books are really good. They're also kind of similar to yours.
Are amazing. They are my heroes, actually, in the writing world, especially with Indian writers.
Yeah.
Roshni Chokshi and Sayantani Dasgupta are my heroes. I look up to them. Their books are phenomenal.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And I just love what they're doing.
They're represented by Rick Riordan.
Yes. Roshni Chokshi is, yes.
I think they do it with Indian mythology, like basically any mythology, basically. Like Greek
Yes,
mythology.
that's what I
like,
think. So Roshni does it with Mahabharata. That's what her Arusha books
No,
are
it's
based.
actually it's mixed. Mahabharata and Ramayana both.
Oh, is that so? I see. Okay. Because I figured she draws more from Mahabharata because all of the kids are the reincarnations of the Pandavas.
Yeah.
But she might
takes inspiration from both, I think.
Very possible, yes.
Because I think her grandmother must be like reading these stories when she's young.
Yes.
Because I've seen her YouTube videos. It was really good.
Yes.
And I think they're really rare authors who decide to like speak more about the Indian culture.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why writers and authors like you are so amazing to have in our generation. I didn't think about being a writer. See, I lived in India my whole life. I grew up in India, I went to school in India, college, university. I moved here only 8 years ago. And I was well in my 20s when I moved here. But when I was, back home in India and I grew up in the 90s, I didn't have any Indian author to look up to that wrote kid lit or middle grade books that I could be like, oh, I want to do that because I love to read. I want to do that. It just never occurred to me because I never saw them, And a funny story is that when I first wrote Ria, and I was maybe 23, 24 when I first wrote it, my whole first draft, I had written Ria and Rohan as white characters. Ria was Rose, Rohan was Bryant. They lived in England somewhere because those are the books that I grew up reading. And I just thought that's what, everybody wants to read about.
So basically, their names would not have been Ria and their names would not have been Rohan.
No, not at all. And so it's so important to have representation and diverse representation. And, for the Indian diaspora, the South Asian diaspora, it's so important to have authors writing books about India and about the Indian experience so that kids like you will also do the same. And because we have so much in our culture and in our day-to-day experiences, in our mythology, in our food, in our clothing, in our dress, in our festivals, there's so much that we have that we can write and talk and share about and, show the world and show us as well, because it's pretty cool. Like Ria looks like you, that's amazing. And I just love seeing that. When I first saw the cover, like I teared up because I'm like, I'd never seen, a middle grade book, a children's book when I was a kid that had an Indian girl on the cover, like looking so fierce with magic, like she's the main character and she's going to save the world and you're going to love her, we just didn't have that. And I think it's so important that we see more of that, which is why the work that Sayantani Dasgupta and Roshni Choksi and now many others that are coming up are doing. You, as you grow older, I have no doubt that you're going to have way more books under your belt than I ever will. It's just fantastic. And that you thought at not even 13, at 10, you said that I'm going to write a book. So this thought had never entered. It didn't enter my mind until I was 23. So, it's very important.
Yeah. So I feel that if your book would not have been like, having an Indian background in it, your book would not have been as extraordinary as it is now. Because like, it would be if it had like characters which you may be seeing in your daily life doing extraordinary things, that would not be as impactful as having an Indian background person doing extraordinary things. Because
I like to think so, yes.
Yeah, because these days there are many books which have ordinary children doing extraordinary things, but there's no extraordinary children doing extraordinary things.
Yeah, and there are very few Indian kids, ordinary or extraordinary, doing extraordinary things, right? And we see so many white kids who are ordinary, doing incredible things. Why can't we have Indian kids doing that? Because we're all the same,
Yeah. So with this, we are at the end of the show. I hope you had fun, everyone, and I hope to see you all guys next time. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.